Hello, and welcome to What is Innovation? The podcast that explores the reality of a word that is in danger of losing its meaning altogether. This podcast is produced by Outlast Consulting, LLC, a boutique consultancy that helps companies use innovation principles to solve their toughest business problems. I'm your host, Jared Simmons, and I'm so excited to have Dr. Charles Davis. Dr. Charles C. Davis Jr. is the Chief Comprehensive Services and Data Officer for Evolve 502. In this role, Dr. Davis is responsible for developing community-wide supports to impact students and families along the cradle-to-career pipeline. This work is accomplished by regularly convening partners from the public, private, and philanthropic sectors. A Dayton, Ohio native, Dr. Davis earned his bachelor's degree in history from Eastern Michigan University, his Master of Education degree from Antioch University McGregor, and his doctorate in Educational Leadership Evaluation and Organizational Development from the University of Louisville. Charles also holds graduate certificates from the University of Pennsylvania, the Georgetown University McCourt School of Public Policy, the Northwestern University Kellogg Center of Executive Education, and is a nationally certified diversity professional. Dr. Davis is married to Dr. Latrica Best and is the father of Charles III and Cullen. Charles, my friend, I am so excited for this conversation. I can't wait to dive into it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, let's get right to it. What, in your mind, is innovation?
To me, and I've actually just really narrowed down on this in the past year, so it's a great time to ask me this question, but I really believe that innovation is implementation. The implementation of, very much like the scientific method, development theory. It's your implementation of your best guess at the time. It's not going to be perfect. It's not probably going to be your final draft, but I'm a very big proponent of innovation driving implementation.
I love that. So innovation is implementation kind of your best guess. Talk me through how you got to that, because connecting innovation and implementation feels obvious to me, but I know I've heard a lot of different folks come at it from a different angle. So tell me about how you got to that.
Well, ironically, I've worked in two offices of innovation that were not, in my opinion, the most innovative spaces to be in within those two organizations.
Right.
I think a lot of times innovation becomes a buzzword or a place to just kind of dump things that you really don't have a place for. You haven't actively made a place for them. And so depending on the leader, it can really spin out, turn some kernels of real thoughtful practice, or it can just die a slow death. So from my perspective, it becomes really comfortable to keep saying, I don't know yet, or I don't have enough data, or I got to keep going to this blog post or to this other conference. And maybe part of that is from writing a dissertation. At some point, you just have to publish it. I mean, it just has to get out.
Right.
Or you'll just be writing on it forever. You'll never reach the point of saturation where you have read every possible thing on a topic. You try to do the best you can.
Right.
But you actually want to graduate. At some point, you just got to push it out.
Right.
So I think the same thing through innovation. Like, you do the best you can, you read best practice, you read the literature, you subscribe to all the newsletters and things that you can, and you try to iterate some version of a solution that can solve your problem. And I think that could be part of the issue, that I think that a lot of times people don't even know why they're there to begin with.
Yes.
From my perspective, when I'm innovating, if you will, I'm trying to solve a specific problem. And so I'm really bracketing my case. And so anything that really falls outside of that scope, I don't deal with at that point. As much as I can try to get information and I can try to get perspective, talk to people who have maybe been in similar situations and their perspectives to my context, at some point you just have to go.
Right.
So to me, it's iterative. Innovation is also iterative. You try it, you see what didn't work. But the beauty of looking at best practice is I should know what didn't work. And so I can go back and pinpoint that thing and tweak and tinker there, and then I'll try it again and see did it work better. So that's really what has helped me just in my professional career and personal career, to just not be afraid to fail. And that's the other thing. People don't like to not be successful, but I don't look at not succeeding on your first try as not being successful. It's just I learned something new.
Right. Right, right. Yeah. No, I love that because you're bringing the element of focus into innovation. And I think a lot of times, especially when you just establish an innovation department or an innovation team or whatever, that vagueness, the lack of a clear expectation on when or what that team will deliver, I think can tend to weigh on it.
Right.
And that's why I really like you talking about starting your personal innovation approach from a problem to be solved, because that's going to get you closer to implementation versus, okay, this team is responsible for innovation. Now go.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like some people like it that way. The
Yeah.
chickens who live in those, you can't ever really tell them that they're wrong.
Exactly.
It's like, well, what's the target? Well, we're figuring some stuff out. So how can you tell me that it's taking too long? Nobody has ever done it before.
Right.
You don't know what the timeline is. It could be a year. It could be 5 years.
Right.
And so depending on how savvy you are at navigating that, if you don't have a real problem you're trying to solve, you can just milk it forever, which is those departments that I'm talking about.
Exactly.
You just don't know why you're there. And if you're a person who is trying to solve problems, it can be very frustrating because it's just a slog. It's just day after day, week after week. What are we here trying to do? And nobody ever has an answer.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think to me that also connects to, and this may seem like a bit of a disconnect, but it also connects to burnout and all of the things that we're seeing now attributing to the pandemic, rightfully so. But also, I think this unknown world that we're in has put a lot of pressure on folks to quote unquote innovate. We got to figure out what the new normal is. We have to create something new for our consumers or our customers or what have you. And when you're not used to, like you said, a problem solving based approach, an implementation based approach to innovation, when you're used to having that department, that vagueness and that kind of openness of expectations and timing, and now all of a sudden everybody's looking at you saying, the way we normally do things is broken. We need something new tomorrow. I think that is contributing a lot to the burnout and fatigue that we're seeing.
Yeah, I totally agree. But on the flip side of that, it can really launch a lot of energy. So to your point, in my day job, one of the things that we encountered during the pandemic, I work for a nonprofit that supports education from a cradle-to-career pipeline standpoint. And one of the things that was really hard nut to crack with the school district that we primarily work with, because they were like, well, things are fine. We got these connections. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you don't have the connection that you think you have.
Right.
Yes, we do. We know how to reach kids. We know how to reach families. And then the pandemic happened. And for the first time, they really kind of had to come hat in hand, like, all right, we don't have the answers. We don't have the answers, Sway. Like, we don't know what to do.
Right.
So what I did was the same plan that I had in 2019 that everybody told me I was an idiot. This will never work. This is stupid. Literally the same plan, Jared. I put it back in front of these people. Oh my God, this is game changing. This is going to bring the whole community together. So sometimes it's like, it's not that you're wrong. It's just sometimes the wrong time. People aren't willing to listen. They don't have the posture to listen to what you have to say.
Right.
Because there's a lot of power dynamics or fiscal matters that require that they don't think they need your solution at this time.
Right.
And that's kind of like the problem with innovation or future thinkers or 30,000 foot thinkers. You see something coming that people who are focused on day-to-day minutia that they can't see. And so that's the frustrating part, because you're like, I see this big worldscape and they're only focused on like the forest for the trees, right?
Right.
So, but on the flip side, so when I brought that plan back out, dusted it back off and like, hey, let's try this, then it provided so much more energy. And really what the innovation was to let other people help you. Not just using lip service of a district saying, well, we want community partners. We want people to help. But you never provide an avenue for people to help or to help at what they're good at.
Yes.
You want people to teach kids. I was a teacher in a former life. Like, that's an actual degree. People are not teachers.
Right. For a reason.
But you see, like, the only way that I can help you is by teaching kids. But I said, okay, so what are you missing right now? Again, problem solving. The schools are closed. You don't have really firm ways to connect with kids and families outside of the school building because your schools are closed. That was your main vector. So what we did was we sought out a number of churches and boys and girls clubs and nonprofits and community centers because kids and families started going there. Either their parents were essential workers and they just didn't have childcare,
right.
or their parents are not teachers and they're like, we don't know what to do with our kids. So a lot of these trusted organizations have started to open their doors, but
okay.
These are typically after school programs. So they didn't have the money to fund full day. They didn't have the money to buy PPE. They didn't have the money to buy meals. But, a lot of these folks, they were just making a way out of no way.
Right.
So when I found them, I said, hey, what do y'all need? And they told me. And so I went and started talking to people. And I was like, look, there's these people out here. How can we support them? So the district, what are you really good at? They said, well, teachers are teaching online, so they can't go out or provide support to these people because they're teaching online. I said, well, what about your substitute teachers? They're not doing anything. And you're not paying them because they're not substitute for any teachers.
Yeah.
So I hired like 100 substitute teachers to go out to these places who were willing to work. The subs are super excited because they weren't working.
Right.
So now they get to work. They get to go out to these locations. I was like, okay, you got all this PPE that's sitting in the warehouse. Nobody's using it because schools aren't open. So we had their facilities department drive PPE all around the city. Their food nutrition services, the USDA had just made their requirements more flexible around their summer feeding program.
Right.
So you could do the summer feeding program throughout the year. So food nutrition services, they started delivering breakfast and lunch out to these churches and stuff.
Wow.
Every time we had a problem, we figured out who could do it. And it wasn't incumbent upon any one person. And that really drove the energy because the people who are in the food service department, they saw themselves in supporting thousands of kids during this time. We didn't send the food service workers out to teach kids.
Right.
Everybody could be the best at what they were really good at. And for the first time, we were able to call out specifically why you were so important.
Wow.
It wasn't, oh, you're just a lunch lady. You are feeding kids every day because they're coming to these places because they don't have stable food environment.
Right.
But you are now providing that solution during this really terrible time in our country's history, our world's history. And so calling that out and giving people the space to be the best at what they are, that really drove the energy. And now it's carried on. So what I'm just describing to you, that was what, 2020? This past summer, which continued to a crazy summer, we had never had a coordinated summer effort around the community. This year, we had 10,000 kids register. 10,000? 10,000. The first time the district ever tried in 2018, it was 800. This past summer, during the pandemic, 10,000. So how did we scale that? Everybody did a little piece. So we didn't have places that had 1,000 kids each. We had 200 places that had 20 kids each. So it was about providing the on-ramp for people to participate who didn't even see themselves participating. Another quick story, then I'll stop on this. As it started to get media attention, there was a local corporation who was like, hey, how can we help? Well, interestingly, they had just built this conference center, but of course, nobody's conferencing because it's a pandemic. But they were like, well, how can we help? You know what? I just know 2 organizations that are right around the corner from your company, and they just got put out of their location because of COVID. Wow. So the corporation, not who you would think of educators, but they let us use the conference center. They had a kitchen. So again, their kitchen staff came back and they cooked meals every day. They gave us an IT person to help the kids with their Chromebook to log onto the internet and do all that.
Right. Set up and everything. Yeah.
They had one of their security guards do the safety checks every day, the temperature check, cleaning staff coming. Again, they supported 60 kids in a very predominantly African-American poor community. And just the exposure of these kids getting to go in basically into an office building, a conference center every day to learn.
Right.
And that organization now has built a relationship with those 2 organizations, and now they become funders.
Wow.
Post-pandemic. So again, it's just, what's the problem? Well, kids can't go to school, kids have needs, and then you can start to chip away.
Right.
You can say, okay, everybody's not going to solve all my problems. I mean, that'd be great if somebody could solve all my problems, but can you do this? All right, cool. Can you do that? All right, cool. Can you do this? And then once you put those 10 things together, now you got a solution.
Oh, man, that's great.
And then once you capture those learnings, then I go do it somewhere else. Once I did it the first time, it became easier. That's why I say it's an iterative process. Once you figure out what didn't work, sorry to those first groups, but once I figured it out, we did it 2 or 3 times. I said, okay, now I got a cake. Now I got a rhythm. So I know what questions to not even ask the 4th group because I already know that doesn't work.
Right.
And then it becomes faster and faster. And then I bring on other people and then they can implement. And that's how you get from 800 to 10,000. Distributing the work, figuring out the problems. I did all that so that other people don't have to.
Right.
And to me, that's where you get to a place where you're really beginning to solve problems through innovation.
Man, that was such a great story. So many perfect examples of what innovation can be in terms of a solution to a problem versus a department or a team or what have you. And the sort of decentralized, coordinated solution that you built could only be built by focusing on a problem and not a mandate, right? Because mandates are tied to headcount, resources. We're the X team and we're meant to do Y. But if you focus on the problem, then, like you said, all these other aspects of how to solve it come into focus and you can look for resources with a different lens. That's a perfect example of that.
But you know what? From that, Jared, that's when the money came.
Yeah.
When I think when people saw activity, like I've never in my career in nonprofit, that's the easiest fundraising I've ever done. Millions of dollars just throwing it at like that much money. I didn't know what to do with it.
Right.
But I started pushing it back out to the organization.
Yeah.
Like I said, they were open for longer and they were trying to hire staff, pay for all this stuff. So much stuff was in kind, but then I actually pushed resources out to the organization. And then once the COVID and CARES money started coming, then we went back to the district to say, all right, here's how you can support now.
Right.
Now we can take that little money that people were just kind of throwing 10,000 here, 20,000 here. You all got $500 million. All right, let's talk money. You know, so like now let's start getting to it.
Right.
But the district was willing because previously I think people came to the district just to give me money. But what I did was I structured their ask in a way that we are providing a service to you.
Right.
So you're actually getting something for this.
Right.
You're not just giving me money. I mean, you are giving me money, but here's what you're buying for your money. And then they can go and pop up to one of these places and see kids coming in, getting COVID testing, parents being able to get COVID testing. The data bore out that there were improvements on the kids who were able to go to one of these learning hubs versus the cohort that was not able to. That makes it easier for people to invest in you because you have proof of concept.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the resources do come.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that paradoxical setup where you focus on the problem and the resources appear versus normally people focus on the resources and try to figure out what problems they can solve. A lot of times it's really how can I preserve and protect the resources that I have versus how can I focus on the problem and then allowing the resources to solve it to come to you. In the broader scheme of philosophy, so to speak, it's the scarcity versus abundance mindset. And I think what you demonstrated well was when you have abundance mindset, like, oh, we can pull these other organizations under the tent. It's not going to diminish us. It's going to expand our impact. Whereas a lot of times in public and nonprofit sectors, and even in the for-profit sector, people want to protect theirs. That is the first and biggest hurdle to innovation because great ideas can come from anywhere and great resources can come from anywhere.
Yeah, and that was a problem with this example as well, because, you know, it was not rose-colored Pollyanna.
Right.
There were, and still are people who are like, well, why is, you know, this organization getting to do? And it wasn't. I just had the better idea. You know, lots of people had ideas. My idea was just better.
And you implemented it.
And I implemented it.
Yeah.
People had 25-page white papers. Give me this money and then I can solve it. Like, how are you going to solve it?
Right.
Tell me what you're going to do tomorrow to solve this problem. Like, you know, not being arrogant, but like, what are you going to do?
Right.
And why I was able to ramp up so quickly is because I knew the literature. I knew best practice. I subscribed to Stanford Social Innovation Review. I look at what other communities are doing. I'm like, okay, I can take pieces of that. I can look at what Strive is doing. I can take pieces from all these things and I can fit it to our context.
Right.
And I know what the flavor of this community is, and I know what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. But I think the biggest thing that really kicked all this off, two things. One, it's on some level, you got to guard your plans and You can't let everybody know, but sometimes you have trusted people who are connected and can take your ideas and your name to higher places. Hugely valuable, because what I had started doing was convening a group of city leaders around this idea. And again, they didn't know what to do, because if they knew what to do, they would be doing it.
Right.
And I think that's also a recognition. Like, you can't wait, because if people knew what to do, they would be doing it right now. So your idea is valuable. If it's different than what's out there, don't take that for granted.
Yeah.
And so we were able to, what I call, aggregate and amplify, because a lot of what these muckety mucks, I call them the gods on Olympus. A lot of times the gods on Olympus, they're just like, well, townspeople are down there doing something. But what I was able to do is go to the top, like, look, it's not just those 2 townspeople, but it's really like 70 townspeople. And they're really serving like thousands of kids. And so they were like, oh, really? Because they didn't know.
They didn't know.
They're all the way up on they're all the way up in the clouds throwing thunderbolts and stuff. They aren't on the ground on the day-to-day understanding what the real issues are.
Right.
So the few nonprofits, again, to your point, they were like trying to slug it out, go to the city and go to foundations, help me, help me, help me. But what I was able to do is to say, it's not just that one, it's really all these people. And then that's where the amplification of resources came. $100,000 isn't enough. You need like 2 million. I was like, okay, yeah, I need 2 million. I do need more, because I'm thinking still so small, because to your point, it's the scarcity mindset. But once I started telling people and it made sense and they saw how they could participate, they were like, yeah, a couple 100,000 isn't enough. Like, I know, you need more. So again, easiest fundraising I've ever done. And it continued. So now it's opened us up to national funders. We had someone come in, Jeff Canada from Harlem Children's Zone. He just came in.
Yeah.
He's like, I believe you, but I got to see this on the ground.
Right.
And he came and I was like, look, it's Derby time. I'm in Louisville. So I'm like, it's Derby time, end of school. This isn't really a great time. But, we took him around to a number of different learning hubs. We took him to one in a school, one in the church, one in a community center. And he was just like, how are you getting all these people from all these different sectors to do the same thing? And I was like, it's just, but we have a North Star. You know what problem you're trying to solve.
Yes.
We're trying to support kids. So no matter where you are, if you have a safe place, caring adult, and kids who need you, you can do this work. I keep it real.
Yeah.
I keep it really simple and figure out what that looks like in your context.
Yeah. And I think that's the essence of being able to focus. And what draws people to your type of approach to solving problems is, 2 things. You know what problem you're trying to solve, and you see progress. And I think that is something people aren't used to in innovation type work and other types of work in that space, is things stand out when they look different when you come back. You and I worked together on some projects in Cincinnati a while back. And one of the things that people really appreciated was, we met with them in January. When we came back in April, the world was different. And it wasn't necessarily we had changed the world, but we had moved from where they last saw us. And it was energizing, because they then believed that it was going to be in a different place the next time. And they want to be part of that.
Yeah. And I think that's what kept people at the table, because, that group that I was talking about, is people have asked and just looking and learning from this work. And I said, it's exactly what you said. We met weekly. Now, I had the mayor or his designee, or his number 2, the superintendent of the 26th largest district in the country, head of United Way, head of the Urban League, head of a foundation, and maybe like 4 other people. And he was like, how did you get these people to come back? Because every week, something had happened.
That group met with you on a weekly basis?
We met weekly from April 2020 until May 2021.
Wow.
Weekly.
Wow.
But it was very much like a situation room.
Yeah.
It's just what you said. Something changed every week. Even if it was just, we sent emails out and we got the emails back.
Right.
We reported on that and we told them what was happening so they could see it. It wasn't this, like you said, innovation, this lots of secret innovation stew that nobody can know about. I'm just going to go over here. When I come back out, something is that. That's what gets people so skeptical, because what are you really over there doing?
Right.
But we were overly transparent, overly communicative. And we told people what we wanted. But yet every week. And I think for a lot of people, that's the most surprising thing. I guess it's surprising to you based on your question.
Yeah.
But every week.
Wow.
Because every week something had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could see that in 2 weeks, something was about to happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
We got another learning hub.
Yeah.
We served another 5 kids. And like, this isn't earth-shattering, monumental stuff, but the people who were around that table, they cared about it. And we brought them back progress on the thing that they cared about.
Yes. Yes.
So I think just even this conversation, I think this just really illuminated to me, allowing people to see themselves in the work is huge.
Yes.
Because then they become your brand evangelist. And like, they were taking my stuff to all these other people.
Yep.
Like, hey, have you heard about what's going on over here?
Yep.
I know you got a pot of money that you're sitting on right now. Like, you need to go give it over here. Because people were just so charged up about it. Because they were just like, even if I'm not going to go out to a learning hub and do this work, I know I can give you $20,000.
Right.
Or I know Walmart donated 3 huge pallets of school supplies.
Wow.
And we got some volunteers to bag them up and give all the school supplies out to the learning hubs. Drove them around. This huge church. They were like, well, what can we do? And she was like, well, I want to get volunteers to go out and help. And I was like, you know, I mean, I'm not asking for that. But they were like, well, how about a book drive? Because like the libraries were closed. You know, they hadn't been in school. She was like, and I think it's important for kids to have tangible books. So they had like little mini scholastic book fairs. They went and bought all these books.
Wow.
And the church members bagged them up and they drove them around. So it was, again, a church group, not even in the city. How can I help? But they found out a way. And I didn't dictate it. I was like, well, here are some things that I hear people need. Pick one and do it.
Right. Right.
It's not me being so prescriptive. It's just, what can you do? And I'm thankful for the grandmother who helped volunteer, and I'm thankful for the city official that gave me $1 million, and I'm thankful for that church that gave me some books. I'm thankful for all of it.
Right.
No one of those gifts is greater than the other. So allowing people to see themselves in the work makes them want to stay around. It makes them want to be engaged.
Well said. Well said. So many valuable lessons in that. And like you said, it's an energy thing. It really does allow people, once they can see how they can be helpful, and you make it so turnkey for people to be helpful. There's already a list to choose from versus, oh, well, I'm not really sure what our needs are. Let me get back to you. And then the energy starts to wane. I think that's part of being ready and staying ready for opportunities to come to your door. I love social innovation. I love this space. And I know I don't get to cover it as often as I'd like on the podcast. So I'm really excited to get from you advice based on your experience for innovators in all types of innovation fields.
Well, why I really got into this work is really because I've had so many jobs in so many different sectors. You know, like I said, I've been a teacher, I've been an executive director, I work in nonprofit now, I've been an administrator in schools, I've worked in IT. That really is what got me into this field, because I recognize that, like, again, from an asset-based approach, like, so many people want to help. They just don't know how. Or they sit at the table and they have conversations and they just totally miss each other.
Right.
So really what I try to do is to be a translator. Like, no, don't walk away. Like, this is what they're really saying.
Yeah.
Corporation, this is what this nonprofit is really saying. Education, school district, this is what the corporation is really saying. This is what the nonprofit is like. So that's really 75% of my work, being the translator. Because when you can keep people at the table for over a year, then you can make stuff happen. But so often it's one disagreement, one misunderstanding. People start missing meetings and people start canceling meeting invites, and then nothing happens. So I just have just a natural curiosity about people and things. This is probably more than you want for your podcast. But one of my favorite leaders of antiquity is Peter the Great from Russia.
The Tsar?
The Tsar, yes. And so he was too young to be the Tsar when it came his time. And so he got a royal emissary or whatever, and he just went all over Europe. And he didn't tell people who he was, but he learned to be a carpenter. He learned to build ships.
Yeah.
He had gotten old enough, he came back. And so I'm sure the Russian people don't, feel that way, but he had a lot of Western influence. So he moved the capital from Moscow to St. Petersburg, and like those onion spiral buildings.
Yeah.
But he brought a lot of innovation, if you will, to Russia, because he had learned from so many different cultures. And so to me, that's how I do my work, because I talk to people, not when I need something from them, but I just know what's on their mind. I know what business people are thinking about. I know what nonprofit people are thinking about. I'm genuinely curious. I'm not saying everybody is curious about everything, but whatever your sector is, when you're curious, you get this library of information. When the opportunities come, you say, hey, I know that Jared is really looking for somebody in the museum field to do X, Y, Z. I know this person over here. Let me provide this connection. And then I step out of the way, really. As much as you can to just have a natural curiosity about other people, other things, even in business. What problem can I solve? Really, when you have a product, you're trying to solve somebody's problem.
Right.
With Pampers, you just work on diapers, right?
I did.
As a parent, that's a problem. That's a problem. How do I stop the kids from peeing all over my floor? I need a diaper. All right, well, I need a really good one.
Exactly.
And I don't want to change it every 10 minutes. So I need it to be really absorbent.
Right.
You're solving problems.
Yep.
Little problems along the way, but you're solving overall really big problems. To me, just a healthy curiosity about the world and other people, it helps you to figure out how whatever solution that you have to their problem is really meaningful to them, because then they'll either want to buy it or they'll want to support you because you have solved something that you heard a long time ago. And really what I've tried to do is, and I'll end with this, I think that everybody has, let's say, 3 levels of problems or work. You know, your A work is what I got is this emails I got to return, form I got to fill out, you know, yada, yada, yada. Your B work is like, I know that B work could help me to do my A work better, but I really don't have time for it. And C work is stuff that like I haven't even thought of. So really what I do is I look at people's B and C work and I just take it off their hands because their B and C is really my A.
I see.
This kind of work for the district, this is like their C work. They got to teach kids every day, buses,
right,
all that stuff.
Yeah.
This is C or D work. But for me, this is my A.
Right.
This is super relevant to me. This is going to make me go. This is going to make my organization really stand out. And so I said, can I take your C's and D's off your plate? And they're like, yeah, I'm not doing them right now.
Right.
But now they see how the C's and D's are helping their A's and B's. But I only do that because I have those relationships and I even know what their C's and D's are.
Right.
So having those authentic conversations, not just the coffee for coffee's sake,
right,
but really getting into people's, you know, what are they thinking and what's on their mind, I think for anybody in any sector will definitely take you far.
Good stuff, man. I'm taking a lot away from this. I love the thinking about taking the stuff people would, and I'm paraphrasing, but the stuff people would like to get to, that is your top priority work, and taking that off their plate. That's brilliant.
You know what? And it's innovation because they're not doing it.
That's right. Exactly.
You just brought innovation to their doorstep.
Exactly. It's a win-win. There's no losers in that situation. And that is, I think, at the heart of what you've unfolded for us here in this conversation around innovation as implementation. When you're in motion, when you're making progress, when you're enrolling people to help solve a specific problem, good things happen and the resources flow to support that. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
Yeah, great conversation always.
I always get the benefit of our conversations, so I'm glad other people will get to experience it as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles Davis.
Thanks so much, Jared.
All right, take care. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this week's show. You can drop us a line on Twitter at Outlast LLC, OUTLAST LLC, or follow us on LinkedIn where we're Outlast Consulting. Until next time, keep innovating, whatever that means.